the loot we staining, or saving thrill, feel something unreal, lifestyle real deal. Gotta stay still, won't get the shield. We some players in the trap ain't playing, going up amazing. Take the loot we staining, or saving thrill, feel something unreal, lifestyle real deal. Gotta stay still, won't get the shield. Been a minute, took an hour, but we back. Took that loss, we on the track. They don't know where we at, but we know where we stand. Only sipping on some yak or rave roll. All the night.
Alright, so just to let you know, guys, I'm here, I'm with you guys. I need to go to the toilet though, so I'm gonna go to the toilet quickly and then I'll be right back.
Can't get off my mind, sipping water so I'm right. Edge of the cliff, if I fall I'ma fly. From the mud ain't pretty, mentally be sticky. Broken heart stay broken, but the mind that stay woken. Showing lots of passion, passion to this greatness. Life's what you make it, trying to get us out the matrix. RoadToTP on the way to the loot. D&D we cooking R&B cause we smooth. Playing with my feelings, Russian roulette with my life. Changing so I make it, all I need is perfect. Perfect timing. Flipping this piece still rising, turning dust to diamonds. Gotta stay strong, stay fighting. Playing with my feelings, Russian roulette with my life. Changing so I make it, all I need is perfect timing. Flipping this piece still rising, turning dust to diamonds. Gotta stay strong, stay fighting. So young caballero, doing what I'm saying, attracting what I'm praying. Grinding to go far on this journey, come with scars. They won't tell you that it's hard. You don't face it, you'll turn soft. Racks the riches with the squad. Congratulations, do you really feel the joy? Feeling so embarrassed with these setbacks, mute the noise. Always gotta find a way to get some more. We want some more. Married to the game, Lambo racing with my mates. Started from the bottom, 0 to 100 like I'm Drake. Visions cause we dreaming, turning dreams into planning. Action men we active, run it up then we vanish. Thinking about the hills every time I wake up. I can't stop for tea, what I'm on is not lost. Hustle with the goons, baddie showing crew love. Palace in the hills, gotta turn this risk up. Playing with my feelings, Russian roulette with my life. Changing so I make it, all I need is perfect timing. Flipping this piece still rising, turning dust to diamonds. Gotta stay strong, stay fighting. Playing with my feelings, Russian roulette with my life. Changing so I make it, all I need is perfect timing. Flipping this piece still rising, turning dust to diamonds. Gotta stay strong, stay fighting.
Okay, back in the dunya. So let's see. As you can see, we have the 4 hour currently in consolidation. We are struggling to do something. We are struggling. But I'm excited for potential sales. And I'm excited for potential buys, you know, and it goes on and on and on, yeah? Anyways, for now, to be honest, I don't really like the price section, man. I'm not gonna lie to you. This price section looks very, what's the word? It looks very messy, man. It looks very, very messy. So either will continue to come down, I think, or will go up from here, you know? But from what I'm seeing right now at the minute, it's just we want to come down, we want to come down, we want to come down. So I think it's just a question of time. But yeah, I don't really see any opportunities, to be fair. I don't see none. So yes, this is currently what the situation is right now.
Perfect timing, flipping his piece still rising, turning dust to diamonds, gotta stay strong, stay fighting, playing with my feelings, Russian roulette with my life, changing so I make it.
So far we've just been stuck in this range.
Perfect timing, flipping his piece still rising, turning dust to diamonds, gotta stay strong, stay fighting.
So yeah, we'll wait and see. In the meantime, yeah, I mean, all we do is just wait, I guess.
Can't get off my mind, sipping water, so I'm
it's
right.
Deep.
Edge of the cliff,
It's
if
deep.
I fall, I'ma fly. From the mud ain't pretty, mentally be sticky. Broken heart stay broken, but the mind that stay woken. Showing lots of passion, passion to this greatness. Life's what you make it, trying to get us out the matrix. RoadToTP on the way to the loot. D&D we cooking R&B cause we smooth. Playing with my feelings, Russian roulette with my life. Changing so I make it, all I need is perfect timing. Flipping his piece still rising.
Alright guys, so I'm just gonna disappear for a bit until, oh yeah, we did 5 minutes until the 15 minute count. But yeah, if you see, let me see if I can pull up the video.
Doing what I'm saying, attracting what I'm praying, grinding to go far on this journey. Come with scars.
Wait. Okay, guys, something's just come up. That's crazy. Russia will nuke Germany and the UK if Ukraine war continues. Warns top Putin advisor. That sounds mad.
Find a way to get some more. We want some more.
Thing is coming, and certainly momentum is in that direction, and events tend to follow momentum almost independently of the judgment of people who are in charge. So it looks like we will be striking Iran or doing something there. A. B. It looks like the United States will be taking Greenland from Denmark, which sort of owns it. There are pictures this afternoon of a kind of sad-looking Danish president or king or emir or potentate or whoever runs Denmark. Oh, how the Scandinavians have been diminished. Leaving the White House looking kind of sad. So, looks like the news has been delivered to him. Sorry, no more Denmark for you. Nuuk is now an American protectorate. And then, of course, there's Venezuela. Venezuela, as you well know, was changed. It was regime changed, sort of, shortly after New Year's by the Trump administration, and the then leader, Nicolas Maduro, and his wife were extradited, some say kidnapped, and moved to New York. They'll be put on trial, we are told. And so there's that, and that country and the rest of the world are trying to figure out, like, what are the implications of this, and what happens to Venezuela next. You have those top three. And of course you pray sincerely and you hope, and sometimes you tell yourself that everything's going to be completely fine, and it may be completely fine, by the way. We don't know any differently. But you also assess downside risk. What are the potential downside risks? Without getting into too much detail, of course they exist. There's downside risk in every human action. And in the case of a strike on Iran, you know, the country could fall apart and become Libya, which is kind of a big deal, given its geographic location, given its energy reserves, and given the region. You could see Iran strike out at Israel, for example, to such an extent with conventional weapons that the Iron Dome, the fabled Iron Dome, does not protect Israel's two largest cities, and a lot of Israelis get killed. You could see that for sure. That's not a crazy thing to worry about. You could also see attacks against energy infrastructure in the Gulf, right across the water from Iran, the 6 Gulf countries that produce a lot of the world's energy, oil and gas, and you could see those taken out. That's possible. They have air defenses in their energy facilities, but how good are they? We don't know. We could find out. And if that happened, you would see an oil shock, which would lead to a global economic shock of unknown proportions, but That's never good. In Greenland, what are the downsides of taking Greenland? Well, you establish a precedent that if I have the power, I get to take what I want. That's always been enforced. That's human nature. We've constructed a kind of elaborate series of rules, theoretical rules, designed to pretend that's not true and to mitigate it to some extent over the last 80 years. But really, that's always been true and always will be true. But that's a pretty tough game. Once you write the rules that if someone can take something because they want it, it's okay, you have to live with them. NATO will effectively be done. How can you have a defensive alliance when one member acts against another? Probably can't. NATO is going out anyway. Is it really bad that NATO is going away? No, it's a huge victory for the world and for the United States. But it's going to be tough for its many employees and for the entire infrastructure of foreign policy thinkers, such as they are in Washington and Brussels and throughout Europe. They're going to have to face the reality that this is not a real thing anymore. If NATO was real, then the U.S. wouldn't have taken Greenland. So there's that, apparently a downside. And then in Venezuela, the downside is obvious. You could have chaos. You could have a black hole. You could have a migrant crisis. Once again, the energy infrastructure could be destroyed. You could see a move against the government that we effectively left in place. Sort of weird to think that a lot of people in Washington are rooting for Delcy Rodriguez, apparently the head of state now, who's a acolyte of Hugo Chavez, but she also represents stability. And at this point, stability is what people want most. So those are the kinds of things that people who think about this stuff for a minute are concerned about. Maybe not panicked, but definitely concerned. But none of those concerns comes even close to what's happening in Eastern Europe, what's happening between Russia and Ukraine. Russia, and prepare yourselves because this is the global headline, Russia is actively considering the use of nuclear weapons against Europe. Not against Kiev, against Europe. Specifically, the UK and Germany. Just taking out the UK and Germany with nuclear weapons. That's a fact. Now, we're going to explain why we know that that's true in a moment. And at the end of this open, we're going to play an interview we did a few hours ago with a man called Sergei Karnagov, who is a longtime political advisor to Vladimir Putin and one of the most famous public intellectuals in Russia, been around for about 35 years, advised Boris Yeltsin, 30 years ago, more than 30 years ago. And in that interview, he says point blank, yes, if the Ukraine war continues at this tempo for a year or two more, we, speaking apparently on behalf of the Russian government, on behalf of his friend Putin, or at least someone who's very familiar with President Putin's thinking, we, Russia, will eliminate the UK and Germany with nuclear weapons. Now that's a headline. No one wants to see Qatari gas wellheads blown up. No one wants to see killing of any kind or destruction of any kind. But taking out the two most important countries in Europe, both of which have big American bases, lots of American personnel, of course, international banking, Germany being the economic engine of Europe, London being the banking center of Europe, of the West, along with New York. And of course, these are two ancient countries with which we have close ties.
I don't think this trade will work.
History and kinship and genetics. We're going to take them out. We're going to eliminate those countries with nuclear weapons. Saying that right into camera. So that's a pretty big story. Have you read that story? Has anyone mentioned that to you? That the most famous public intellectual in Russia, a close friend of Vladimir Putin's, exactly the same age, the two were born a month apart, known each other a long time, he's saying in public that Russia plans to use nuclear weapons against Western Europe. Russia is going to blow up the UK and Germany if things don't get resolved soon. You probably haven't heard that. It hasn't actually been on the front page of the New York Times. I don't think the Times of London has mentioned it. No one seems to be paying any attention at all to the biggest story of our lifetimes, potentially. And that's very odd. And it's not just one guy who's friends with Putin who's saying this. If you watch carefully, or not even carefully, with one eye open at what Russia's been doing recently things are changing. So Russia has publicly rewritten its nuclear strategy to include use of nuclear weapons against countries that are acting as proxies for nuclear armed powers. Now, this is kind of classic Russian bureaucratic talk, but it means that under Russian law, Russia is permitted to, by its own rules, blow up Germany, even though Germany does not have nuclear weapons. The UK supposedly does. You wonder whose hands they're in. But Germany does not have nuclear weapons, and Russia has just said, no, you're fair game for a nuclear strike. And not a defensive nuclear strike, like you launched at us, we're going to launch against you. No. You keep poking us in the face, and we're going to eliminate you. Said that publicly. And then last week, a week ago today, Russia sent hypersonic missiles into Kiev, Ukraine. Now, the hypersonic missiles killed probably 4 people. This was not an attack designed to destroy important infrastructure or to cause massive civilian casualties. This was an attack designed as a message, and the Russians just said this point blank. This was an attack designed to say, whoa, you've pushed us too far. We feel like our core interests, our existential interests are threatened, and if you don't back off, the next hypersonic missile we send, against which no country has any meaningful defense, you can't stop a hypersonic missile. No one's even claimed that you can. The next one will have a nuclear warhead on it, and it's coming at you, Europe. So let's just think this through for a sec. Why would Russia, which is supposedly in this bitter war against Ukraine, being backstopped by NATO and the US, et cetera, but they're fighting Ukraine over territory, why would Russia be threatening Europe? Because the Russians, whatever their faults, don't lie to themselves as aggressively as we do. And the Russians are saying out loud what is absolutely true about this war, which is it's a proxy war. It is not a war between Russia and Ukraine, and it never has been. And nothing that's happened in Ukraine since the fall of the Soviet Union 35 years ago has really been about Ukraine. There has been a global scramble to control Ukraine, its land, its resources. There are other reasons people want to control Ukraine that are not directly related to land or resources that have to do with history. But in any case, non-Ukrainians have been calling the shots in Ukraine for 35 years. That's what Maidan was. That's what the coup, the US-backed coup was. None of this had anything to do with Ukraine. What's best for Ukraine? We're going to make Ukraine a sovereign nation. The opposite has happened. Ukraine has less sovereignty. Ukraine is more of a puppet, and Ukraine has suffered more than maybe any country on earth over the last 4 years. Now, why? Well, we'll get into that. So the new year is here, but that does not mean you've got to overhaul your whole life, despite claims to the contrary. You don't have to take drastic measures. Make a few changes here and there, and you'll be a lot better off. And you can start with the snacks in your pantry. Now, products from standard American chip brands are, let's be honest, pretty repulsive, filled with chemicals. They make you feel heavy and bloated. They don't even taste that good. They're not good for you. We recommend an upgrade with masa chips. Masa is the easiest way to eat clean without feeling like you're on a diet. The chips contain 3 ingredients. That's it. Organic corn, sea salt, 100% grass-fed beef tallow, and that is it. No seed oils, no mystery chemicals, just food, actual food. And they're amazing, and you feel great after. You don't feel weighed down. We particularly enjoyed the Cobanero flavor lately, but they're all great. You want to give them a try? Visit masachips.com, M-A-S-A, chips.com/Tucker. Use the code Tucker for 25% off your first order, or you can click the link in the video description, or you can scan the QR code to claim this outstanding offer. And if you don't feel like ordering online, you can buy them nationwide at your local Sprouts supermarket. Stop by and pick up a couple of bags before somebody else does. But first, just to show you how complete...
Okay, so quickly that caught my attention, yeah? So look, on February 5th, 2026, decades of legally binding limits on global... Can't even speak. On February 5th, 2026, decades of legally binding limits on global nuclear weapons stockpiles will come to an end with the expiration of the new Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. The last remaining bilateral treaty constraining Russian and US nuclear forces. Alright, so this is where it gets peak here. Imagine it says 1 second. New START entered into force in 2011 after bipartisan approval from the US Senate. It had an initial duration of 10 years. So imagine that's 2021, yeah? With an additional 5-year extension option that the US and Russia agreed to adopt in early February 2021. That means they already knew, potentially they already knew what was coming in 2026. Because I think this year, guys, something is coming. But it sounds silly, but I think it's too late anyways. Yeah, so now we're in the shit. Now we are in the shit, man. Anyways, it was nice knowing you all. So this is coming to an end. What's this? That's not good enough, mate. That's not good enough.
Completely, this war is being controlled from the outside on behalf of outside non-Ukrainian interests for reasons that have nothing to do with what's good for Ukraine. I want to show you the following clip. And by the way, if you just want to prove the point, how many Ukrainians have been killed in this war paid for by the West? Paid for by NATO and Joe Biden? No one knows. Hundreds of thousands, obviously. It's depopulated the country, but nobody cares. And you would think that if we're waging a war on behalf of the freedom-seeking people of Ukraine, if we love the Ukrainians so much that we're willing to send them hundreds of millions of dollars and our best CIA targeters and willing to put biolabs in their country to defend them from Russian aggression, you would think if we love them that much, we might keep a tally of how many of them have been killed in the prime of life on the flat landscape of Ukraine. But of course, no one's keeping score because nobody cares. The people running this war on the Western side have zero interest in what it costs Ukraine. None. Because it was never about them in the first place. And now to the promised clip. This was shot about 10 years ago. We just saw it. And it's an amazingly instructive piece of videotape. Now you will see and you will recognize immediately the Hungarian man on the left. That would be Mr. George Soros, one of the world's most successful financiers. I think as he's euphemistically described, a guy who's bet against national currencies, really done nothing to make the world a better place or to improve the lives of individuals, has only sown chaos and hatred and violence, really for the length of his professional life, for whatever reason, whatever motive might be animating him. He is on the left. On the right is a woman called Chrystia Freeland. Now, she's not Ukrainian either. She's from Canada. She's from Alberta, Canada. She spent the bulk of her career as a journalist working for Reuters and other news organizations like that, both in London and in Washington, where we spent quite a bit of time with her. And then she became the Deputy Prime Minister of Canada under Justin Trudeau. And an economic poobah. And if you're interested in how well she did, well, you can just look up facts about the current state of the Canadian economy. Not very well. But here's the interesting thing. Just recently, Chrystia Freeland, who again is not a product of, she didn't grow up in Ukraine. She grew up in Canada and lived in London and Washington. Chrystia Freeland is somehow working for unelected President Zelensky in Ukraine, who himself is not really that Ukrainian. Grew up speaking Russian. He's a citizen of the world like she is. Like they all are. But she's now an unpaid economic advisor to Ukraine. Unpaid. Right. Okay. They're divvying up the natural resources of a country they know will soon collapse, with no regard for the people who've been killed, of course. But here is Chrystia Freeland and George Soros 10 years ago talking about Ukraine, and in so doing, giving the game away. Watch this.
Yeah, and I will just offer my own personal testimony here. It's actually amazing in Ukraine, the new Ukrainian government, the new Ukrainian leadership. Everyone who I know in that group has been touched somehow by open society and by Jordan, like literally, either people personally got a scholarship or someone, you know, their wife got a scholarship. It's a really remarkable thing.
Well, this was, for me, quite an experience to see this, and I didn't realize actually how big an effect it has had over a 25-year period, because those were students. 25 years later, they were leaders.
Everybody she knows in Ukrainian leadership, says Chrystia Freeland, everybody has taken money from George Soros, or their wives have taken money from George Soros. Everyone running the country is actually employed by this Hungarian billionaire who's got nothing to do with the country. Oh, no one would admit that now. That's a conspiracy theory. But George Soros smiled and took credit for it. Of course, we had no idea how successful we were. Successful at what? What was the plan here? You put everybody in a country's leadership.
Okay, 1 second. The 30-minute candle's about to close, and guys, I don't know. The price action, I'm telling you guys, it's not looking. It's not looking beautiful. It is not looking beautiful. Let's see. So the 30-minute candle closed now. So bearing in mind, I've put this position tool here because I don't know. I got like a bad feeling about it. Like, let's say. But yeah, I mean, I could be wrong. I could be totally wrong, but you know, getting the cells, it was more about getting it here rather than the middle. As you see here, there's lots of pressure. So anyways, let's see what happens. So we took a nosedive. Are we gonna continue with the nosedive? Let's see. Oh yeah, by the way guys, if you haven't joined the Telegram, make sure to join. Here you'll be able to find all of the evidence you need for my trades. It's literally just RoadToTP, right? And yeah, take a look, enjoy, join. But yeah, anyways, guys, I'm gonna go because I actually have to go to work. I have to get ready for work at 10 o'clock in the morning because your boy is in a competition, a cocktail competition, and I don't even drink alcohol, but I'm gonna make it the best I can. and it's gonna be fun, I suppose. It's the first time I'm doing like a project with a manager, so should be fun. Should be fun. So yeah, guys, I'll update you in the Telegram how the position goes. But for now, I'm going to love you and leave you.
That boy is Benny Hanna.